Hi guys, this is Allison from Allylat Creations. How are you? Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. And if you get anything from my work, a connect done, epiphany, a mind explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, artwork to create, please consider supporting my work. All the links are at the bottom of the description. Allylatcreations211.com is my portfolio. That's where you can see all the beautiful pyramids behind me. They all have different purposes: EMF, healing, protection. I do paint and sip paintings. I do signage. I have hyper-realistic portraits that I do. If you want anything customized or made just for you, please email me. That's the best way to get into contact with me. I do everything privately. 3D is a level tier membership on my channel where you can get channel member only videos. I do a full spread read on oracle cards, and once a month I do a raffle, and raffle winners tomorrow, you're getting your stuff put in the mail. I finally got the boxes. You guys get free entries into my raffles, and it's really fun. And it's a nice way to say thank you for supporting this channel and myself. The Secret Doctrine. We're going to pick up from where we left off. Noah was a Kabir. I don't know how to pronounce that. Hence, he must have been a demon. That's some fighting words right there with many people. It matters little where it is, Isis or Ceres, the Cabria, or again the Cabri, who have taught men agriculture, but it is very important to prevent fanatics from monopolizing all the facts in history and legend and from fathering their distortions of true history and legend upon one man. Noah is either a myth along with the others or one whose legend was built upon the Cabrian or Titanic tradition as taught in Samothrace. Thrace. He has therefore no claim to be monopolized by either Jew or Christian. If, as Faber tried to demonstrate at such a cost of learning and research, Noah is a Atlantean and a Titan, and his family are the Cabri, or pious Titans, then biblical chronology falls by its own weight, and along with it, all the patriarchs, the antediluvian and pre-Atlantean Titans. As now discovered and proven, Cain is Mars, the god of power and generation, and of the first sexual bloodshed. Tabul Cain is Cabri, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. Or if this will please better, he is one of the Vulcan. Jabal is taken from Cabri instructors in agriculture, such as have cattle. Jubal is the father of all those who handle the harp. He or they who fabricated the harp for Kronos and the trident for Poseidon. The history or fables about the mysterious Telkins. Again, guys, my brain's off. We're going through a crazy roller coaster of emotions. I'm there again. Fables echoing each and all the archaic event of our esoteric teachings furnish us with the key to the origin of Cain's genealogy. They give the reason why the Roman Catholic Church identifies the accursed blood of Cain and Ham with sorcery and makes it responsible for the deluge. We're not the Telkins It is argued the mysterious iron workers of Rhodes, they who were the first to raise statues to the gods, furnished them with weapons and man with magic arts. And it isn't not that they who were destroyed by a deluge at the command of Zeus, as the Canaanites were by that of Jehovah. The Telchines are simply the Kabir and the Titans in another form. They are the Atlanteans also. Like Lemnos and Samothrace says, Desham, Rhodes, the birthplace of the Telchians, is an island of volcanic formation. The island of Rhodes emerged suddenly out of the seas after having been previously engulfed by the ocean, say the traditions. Like Samothrace of the Kabir, it is connected in the memory of man with the flood legends. As enough has been said on the subject, however, it may be left for the present. But we may add a few more words about Noah, the Jewish representative of nearly every pagan god in one or another's character. The Homeric songs contained poetized all their later fables about the patriarchs, who are all sidereal cosmic and numerical symbols and signs. The attempt to disconnect the two genealogies, those of Seth and Cain, and the further attempt to, as fertile to show them real historical men, has only led to more serious inquiries into the history of the past and to discoveries which have damaged forever the supposed revelation. For instance, the identity of Noah and Melchizedek being established, the further identity of Melchizedek or Father Sadik with Chronos Saturn is proved also. That it is so may be easily demonstrated. It is not denied by any of the Christian writers. Bryant concurs with all of those who are of the opinion that Sadik or Sadik was the patriarch Noah, as also Melchizedek, and that the name by which he is called, or Sadik, corresponds to the character given of him in Genesis. And there's some Hebrew names, Hebrew letters here. He was, I don't read Hebrew, Sadik, or just man, and perfect in his generation. All science and every useful art were attributed to him, and through his sons transmitted to posterity. Now it is Sanchon Theon, don't know how to pronounce that, who informs the world that the Kabir were the sons of Sadik or Zadok, Melchizedek. True enough, this information have descended to us through Eusebius, may be regarded with a certain amount of suspicion, as it is more than likely that he dealt with that long S name, San, whatever it is, works as he has with Menthelos' synchronistic tables. But let us suppose that the identification of Sadik, Chronos, or Saturn with Noah and Melchizedek is based on one of the Escubian pious hypothesis. Let us accept it as such, along with Noah's characteristic as a just man. And he's supposed to duplicate the mysterious Melchizedek, king of Salem, and priest of the high God after his own order. And finally, having seen what they all were spiritually, astronomically, psychically, and cosmically, let us now see what they became rabbinically and kabbalistically. Speaking of Adam, Cain, Mars, personifications, we find the author of the Source of Measures enumerating our very esoteric teachings in the Kabbalistic researches. Thus he says, now Mars was the lord of birth and of death, of generation, of destruction, of plowing, of building, of sculpture or stone cutting, of architecture, in fine, of all arts. He was the primeval principle, disintegrating into the modification of two opposites for production. Astronomically, too, he held the birthplace of the day and year, the place of the increase of strength, Aries, and likewise the place of its death, Scorpio. He held the house of Venus and that of the Scorpion. He as birth was good, as death was evil. As good he was light, as bad he was night. As good he was man, as bad he was woman. He held the cardinal points, and as Cain and Vulcan, or Pater Sadik, or Melchizedek, he was lord of the elliptic, or balance, or line of adjustment, and therefore was just one. The ancients held to there being 7 planets, or great gods growing out of 8, and Pater Sadik, the just or right one, was lord of the 8th, which was Mataterra. This makes their functions plain enough after they had been degraded and establishes the identity. The Neochian deluge was described in its dead letter and within the period of biblical chronology, having been shown to have never existed. The pious but very arbitrary supposition of Bishop Cumberland has put to follow that deluge into the land of fiction. Indeed, it seems rather fanciful to any impartial observer to be told that there were 2 distinct races of Kabir, the first consisting of Ham and Mazariam, who he conceives to be Jupiter and Dionysus of Mansius, and the second of the children of Shem are the Kabir of Shun-Iston, however you pronounce that, while their father Sedek is consequently the scriptural Shem. The Kabrim, the mighty ones, are identical with our primeval Dihant Kohans, with the corporal and the incorporeal Pitris, and with all the rulers and instructors of the primeval races, which are referred to as the gods and kings of the divine dynasties. Interesting. That's an interesting take if we look at it in that context. It really is. We were giants. The oldest Persian traditions about the polar and the submerged continents. Legendary lore could not distort facts so effectively as to reduce them to unrecognizable shape. Between the traditions of Egypt and Greece on the one hand, and Persia on the other, a country ever at war with the former, there is too great a similarity of figures and numbers to allow such coincidence to be due to simple chance. This was well proven by Bailey. Let us pause for a moment to examine these traditions from every available source to compare the better those of the Magi with the so-called Grecan fables. Ooh. Those legends have now passed into popular tales, the folklore of Persia, as many a real fiction has found its way into our universal history. The stories of King Arthur and his knights of the Round Table are also fairy tales to all appearances. Yet they are based on facts and pertain to the history of England. Why should not the folklore of Iran be part and parcel of the history and the prehistoric events of Atlantis? That folklore says as follows. Before the creation of Adam, 2 races lived and succeeded each other on earth. The Devs, who reigned 7,000 years, and the Paris, the Izeds, who reigned but 2,000 during the existence of the former. The Devs were giants, strong and wicked. The Pers were smaller in stature, but wiser and kinder. Here we recognize the Atlantean giants and the Aryans, or the Rakshas of the Ramayana and the children of Bharata Varusha, or India, the ante and the post-Diluvians of the Bible. Gaian, or rather Gainan, true or occult wisdom and knowledge, also called Gian bin Gain, or Wisdom, son of wisdom, was the king of the Paris. He had a shield as famous as that of Achilles, only instead of serving against all enemy in war, it served as a protection against black magic, the sorcery of the Devs. Gan ben Gan had reigned 2,000 years when Iblis, the devil, was permitted by God to defeat the Deos and scatter them to the other end of the world. Even the magic shield, which produced on the principles of astrology, destroyed charms, enchantments, and bad spells, could not prevail against Iblis, who was an agent of fate or karma. They count 10 kings in their last metropolis called Khanum and make the 10th Kari Maruth identical with the Hebrew Adam. These kings answer to the 10 antediluvian generations of kings as given by Berossos. Distorted as those legends are now found, one can hardly fail to identify them with the Chaldean, Egyptian, Greek, and even Hebrew traditions, the latter disdaining in its exclusiveness to speak of pre-Adamite nations, yet allows these to be clearly inferred by sending out Cain, one of the two only living men on earth, into the land of Nod, where he gets married and builds a city. Now, if we compare the 9,000 years mentioned by the Persian tales with the 9,000 years which Plato declared had passed since the submersion of the last Atlantis, a very strange fact is made apparent. Bailey remarked he distorted it by his interpretation. The secret doctrine may restore the figures to their true meaning. First of all, we read in Critas that one must remember that 9,000 years had elapsed since the War of the Nations, which lived above and outside the Pillars of Hercules, and those which peopled the lands on the inside, on this side. In Timaeus, Plato says the same, the secret doctrine declaring that most of the latter islander Atlanteans perished in the interval between 850,000 and 700,000 years ago, and that the Aryans were 200,000 years old when the first great island or continent was submerged. There hardly seems any reconciliation possible between the figures, but there is, in truth. Plato, being an initiate, had to use the veiled language of the sanctuary, and so had the Magi of Chaldea in Persia, through whose exoteric revelations the Persian legends were preserved and passed to posterity. Those who finds the Hebrews calling a week 7 days and a week of years, when each of its days represents 360 solar years, and the whole week is 2,520 years. In fact, they had a sabbatical year, and their Sabbath lasted indifferently 24 hours or 24,000 years in their secret calculations of the sods. We of the present times call an age of century. They of Plato day, the initiated writers, at any rate, meant by a millennium not 1,000 but 100,000 years. Hindus, more interdependent than any, never concealed their chronology. Thus, when saying 9,000 years, the initiates will read 900,000 years, during which space of time, from the first appearance of the Aryan race, when the Phyllocene portions of the once great Atlantis became gradually sinking, and other continents to appear on the surface, down to the final disappearance of Plato's small island of Atlantis, the Aryan races had never ceased to fight with the descendants of the first giant races. This war lasted till nearly the close of an age which preceded the Kali Yuga, and was the Mahabharatan War, so famous in Indian history. Such blending of the events and epochs and the bringing down of hundreds of thousands into thousands of years does not interfere with the numbers of years that have elapsed, according to the statement made by the Egyptian priests in Solon, since the destruction of the last portion of Atlantis. The 9,000 years was the correct figures given. The latter event has never kept a secret and had only faded out of memory of the Greeks. The Egyptians had their records complete because isolated for being surrounded by sea and desert. They had left untrammeled by other nations till about a few millenniums before our era. History for the first time catches a glimpse of Egypt and its great mysteries through Herodotus, if we do not take into account the Bible in queer chronology. And how little Herodotus could tell is confessed by himself when speaking of a mysterious tomb of an initiate at Sais in the sacred precinct of Minerva. There, he says, behind the chapel is the tomb of one whose name I consider it impious to deluge. In the enclosure stand large obelisks, and there is a lake near, surrounded with a stone wall formed in a circle. In this lake they performed a night that persons adventurers, which they call mysteries. On these matters, however, though I am accurately acquainted with the particulars of them, I must observe a discreet silence. On the other hand, it is well to know that no secret was so well preserved and so sacred with the ancients as that of their cycles and computations. From the Egyptians down to the Jews, it was held as the highest sin to divulge anything pertaining to the correct measure of time. It was for the divulging the secrets of the gods. The Tantalus was plunged into the infernal regions. The keepers of the sacred Sullivan books were threatened with the death penalty for revealing a word from them. Sigillions, I don't know if I'm saying that right, were in every temple, especially in those of Isis and Serapis, each pressing a finger to the lips, while the Hebrews taught that to divulge after initiation into the rabbinical mysteries, the secrets of Kabbalah, was like eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. It was punishable by death. And yet we Europeans accepted the exoteric chronology of the Jews. What wonder that it has influenced and colored ever since all our conceptions of science and duration of things. The Persian traditions then are full of two nations or races, now entirely extinct, as some think, whereas they are only transformed. They are ever speaking of and describing the mountains of Kaf, which contain a gallery built by the giant Argak, wherein the statues of the ancient men under all their forms are preserved. They call them Solomons, or the wise kings of the East, and count 72 kings of that name. 3 among them reigned for 1,000 years each. Samiek, the beloved son of Kai Maroth, Adam, their first king, died murdered by his own giant brother. The father had a perpetual fire preserved on the tomb, which contained his cremated ashes. Hence the origin of fire worship, as some Orientalists think. Then came Hoshnek, maybe. Again, my pronunciations are horrible. The prudent and the wise. It was his dynasty which rediscovered metals and precious stones, which had been concealed by the devs or giants in the bowels of the earth. How to make brass work, to cut canals and improve agriculture. As usual, it is Hoshnek, again, who is credited with having written the work called Eternal Wisdom, and even with having built the cities of Luz, Babylon, and Espen, though they were built ages later. But a modern Delphi is built on 6 other older cities. So these just named cities may be built on emplacements of other cities of an immense antiquity. As to his date, it can only be inferred from another legend. In the same tradition, that wise prince is credited with having made war against the giants on a 12-legged horse, whose birth is attributed to the amours of a crocodile with a female hippopotamus. This doe-caped was found on Dry Island or New Continent. Much force and cunning had to be used to secure the wonderful animal, but no sooner had Hushenk mounted him than he defeated every enemy. No giants could withstand his tremendous power. Notwithstanding this, King of Kings was killed by an enormous rock thrown at him by the giants from the great mountains of Damavend. Ta'morath is the third king of Persia, the St. George of Iran, the knight who always has the best of and who kills the dragon. He is a great enemy of the Devs, who in his day dwelled in the mountains of Kaf and occasionally made raids on the Paris. The old French chronicles of the Persian folklore called him the Davbend, the conqueror of the giants. He too was credited with having founded Babylon, Nineveh, Durabek. Like his grandsire, Hushenk, Tatmorath also had his steed, only far more rare and rapid, a bird called Sigma Simora something Ank. Whatever. A marvelous bird in truth, intellect, a polyglot, and even very religious. What says the Persian phoenix? It complains of its old age, for it is born cycles and cycles before the days of Adam. It was witnessed the revolutions of long centuries. It has seen the birth and the close of 12 cycles of 7,000 years each, which multiplied esoterically will give us again 840,000 years. Simor is born with the last deluge of the pre-Adamites, says the Romance of Simor and the Good Caliph. What says the Book of Numbers? Esoterically, Adam Rishon is the lunar spirit, Jehovah in a sense, or the Pitris, and his three sons, Cain, Habel, and Seth, represent the three races as already explained. Noah, Zitharus, represents in his turn in the cosmogeological key the third race separated, and his three sons in the last three races, Ham, moreover symbolizing that race which uncovered the nakedness of the parent race and of the mindless committed sin. Tatmorath visits on his high-winged steed Ariman, the mountains of Kaf or Half. He finds there the Paris ill-treated by the giants and slays Argan and the giant Demrash. Then he liberates the good Peri, Morgana, whom Demrash had kept as a prisoner, and takes her over to the Dry Island, the new continent of Europe. After him came Gameschild, who builds Escar or Persepolis. The king reigns 700 years and believes himself in his great pride immortal and demands divine honors. Fate punishes him. He wanders for 100 years in the world under the name, there's no pronouncing that one, the Two-Horned. But the epithet has no connection with the two-horned gentleman of the cloven foot. The two-horned is the epithet given in Asia, uncivilized enough to know nothing of the attributes of the devil, to whose conquerors who have subdued the world from the east to the west. Then come the usurper Zoak and Ferdinand, one of the Persian heroes, who vanquishes the former and shuts him up in the mountains of Damavend. These are followed by many others down to another one I am not pronouncing, who founded a new dynasty. Sorry, guys, I cannot pronounce these names. Fun. Such is the legendary history of Persia, and we have to analyze it. What are the mountains of Kaf to begin with? Whatever they may be in their geographical status, whether they are the Caucasian or Central Asian mountains, it is far beyond these mountains to the north that legend places the Devs and Paris, the latter the remote ancestors of the Parsis and Pharisees. Oriental tradition is ever referring to an unknown glacial gloomy sea and to dark region, within which nevertheless are situated the Fortunate Islands, wherein bubbles from the beginning of life on earth the fountain of life. But the legend asserts, moreover, that a portion of the first dry island continent, having detached itself from the main body, has remained since then beyond the mountains of Kohakaf, the stony girdle that surrounds the world. A journey of 7 months' duration will bring him who is past of Soliman's ring to that fountain, if he keeps on journeying north straight before him as the bird flies. Journeying, therefore, from Persia straight north will bring one along the 60th degree of longitude, holding to the west to Nova Zembla, and from the Caucasus to the eternal ice beyond the Arctic Circle, would land one between 60 and 45 degrees longitude, or between Nova Zembla and Spitsbergen. Thus, of course, if one has the Docaptian horse of Hoshnik, or the winged Simora of Tomarath, upon which to cross over the Arctic Ocean. Nevertheless, the wandering songsters of Persia and the Caucasus will maintain to this day that far beyond the snow-capped summits of Cap or the Caucasus, there is a great continent now concealed from above, that if it is reached by those who can secure the services of a 12-legged progeny of the crocodile and the female hippopotamus, whose legs become at will 12 wings, or by those who have the patience to wait for the good pleasures of Sim-Og-Ank, who promised that before she dies she will reveal the hidden continent to all and make it once more visible and within easy reach by means of a bridge, which the ocean devs would build between that portion of the dry island and its several parts. This relates, of course, to the seventh race, Simora, being the Monvarotic cycle. It is very curious that Cosmas Indicoplestius, who lived in the 6th century AD, should have also always maintained that man was born and dwelt at in a country beyond the ocean, a proof of which has been given him in India by a learned Chaldean. He says, the lands we live in are surrounded by the ocean, but beyond that ocean, there is another land which touches the walls of the sky. And it is in this land that man was created and lived in paradise. During the deluge, Noah was carried into his ark into the land of his posterity now inhabits. The 12-legged horse of Henshek, whatever his name is, was founded on that continent named the Dry Island. The Christian topography of Cosmas Indicoplestius and its merits are well known, but here the good father repeats a universal tradition, now moreover corroborated by facts. Every Arctic traveler suspects a continent or a dry island beyond the line of eternal ice. Perhaps now the meaning of the following passage from one of the commentaries may become clearer. In the first beginnings of human life, the only dry land was on the right end of the sphere, where the globe is motionless. The whole earth was one vast watery desert, and the waters were trepid. There man was born on the seven zones of the immortal, the indestructible of the Mamvarata. There was eternal spring in darkness, but that which is darkness to the man of today was light to the man of his dawn. There the gods rested, and Fohat reigns ever since. Thus the wise fathers say that man is born in the head of his mother, Earth, and that her feet at the left and generated bigot the evil winds that blow from the mouth of the lower dragon. Between the first and the second races, the eternal central land was divided by the water of life. It flows around and animates her, Mother Earth's body. Its one end issues from her head. It becomes foul at her feet, the southern pole. It gets purified on its return to her heart, which beats under the foot of the sacred Shambhala, which then in the beginnings was not yet born. For it is in the belt of man's dwelling, the earth, that lies concealed the life and health of all that lives and breathes. During the first and second races, the belt was covered with the great waters. But the great mother travailed under the waves, and a new land was joined to the first one, which our wise men call the headgear, the cap. She travailed harder for the third race, and her waist and navel appeared above water. It was the belt, the sacred Himvat, which stretches around the world. She broke toward the setting sun from her neck downward to the southwest into many lands and islands, but the eternal land, the cap, broke not asunder. Dry lands covered the face of the silent waters to the four sides of the world. All these perished in their turn. They appeared the abode of the wicked, the Atlantis. The eternal land was now hid, for the waters became solid, frozen under the breath of her nostrils and the evil winds from the dragon's mouth. This shows that Northern Asia is as old as the second race. One may even say that Asia is contemporary with man, since from the very beginnings of human life, its root continent, so to speak, already existed, that part of the world now known as Asia being only cut off from it in a later age, divided by the glacial waters. If then the teaching is understood correctly, the first continent which came into existence capped over the whole North Pole like one unbroken crust, and remains so to this day beyond the inland sea, which seemed like an unreachable mirage to the few Arctic travelers who perceived it. During the second race, more land emerged from under the waters as a continuation of the head from the neck, beginning on both hemispheres, on the line above the most northern part of Spitzbergen, on Mercator's projection on our side. It may have included on the American side the localities that are now occupied by Baffin's Bay and the neighboring islands and promontories. There is hardly reached southward, the 70th degree of latitude here. It formed the horseshoe continent of which the commentary speaks, of two ends of which one included Greenland, with its prolongation, which crossed the 50th degree a little southwest, and the other Kamchatka, I'm totally butchering that, the two ends being united by what is now the northern fringe of the coast of eastern and western Siberia. This broke asunder and disappeared in the early part of the third race. Lemuria was formed. When it was destroyed in its turn, Atlantis appeared. I'm going to leave it there because there's even more that we're going to read, but I found that very highly interesting, and it's good perception. It's good expansion of consciousness to think differently about what we've been told about Atlantis, Lemuria, and how our Earth has been formed. We get it from many of various books that I read, But this is a very eye-opening one, and one that should be taken into some account, because Game of Thrones is the first thing that really popped into my brain when describing some of this stuff, butchering it, by the way, but that's what I do. So, sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within, be the soldier, be the lighthouse, seed your truths, light that path forward. I hope to see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support, and have a blessed and beautiful day. Bye for now.